Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to another fine Wednesday morning here in the city of Philadelphia, and welcome to another coffee break chat. I'm your host, James Jackson, he, they pronouns, executive producer, Light Thief Productions, and we've got a good show for you today. This week's talk, embrace what makes you unique, and even if it makes others uncomfortable. We'll talk a little bit about International Women's Day, Twitter, Delaware River waterfront, and the Philly mayoral race. We're going to be talking about the Philly mayoral race probably until it actually happens, and probably a little bit after it happens because it's a thing. It's happening. It's going on, and there are moves being made in local Philadelphia politics constantly, and it's interesting. I mean, it's interesting what happens in a race for mayor in a town that is dominated by Democratic politics. Um, this mayoral race, we have a couple of Republican candidates, interestingly, for both mayor and offices in the city council. The former lead of the Republican Party, like highest office holder in the Republican Party in Philadelphia, Council Member David O, resigned to throw his hat in the ring for the office of mayor. Um, I don't know where that gets David O. He has a lot of support as far as his politics and his policies have always been actual uh, middle ground politics. However, like the support that he's had has always been about he's a good dude and he supports the arts. So let's keep him on city council. Um, I don't know where a mayoral run brings him in a distant 15th. I guess I don't know, but maybe we'll get him on the show. Maybe we'll talk to him, see what he's trying to do. Um, uh, but in the meantime, we have other guests. We have other things to talk about. This morning, we have Megan and Newton from New Light Theater talking about A View from the Bridge, and I'm going to bring them on screen right now. Good morning, Megan. Good morning, Newton. If you would please introduce yourselves, your pronouns, what it is you do. Let's start with Megan.
Hey, good morning. I'm Megan Bellwoar. I use she, her pronouns. I am a freelance theater artist. I'm a director and an actor and an educator, and have been really excited to be spending the last several weeks with the cast and staff and crew of New Light Theater, making something really special.
Awesome. And Newton, if you would introduce yourself, your pronouns, what it is you do.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Newton Buchanan, he, him pronouns. I'm co founder of New Light Theater Company, co founder of Black Theater Alliance. I'm a producer, actor, freelance artist, lighting designer, production manager, all kinds of things. I like to make theater. I like to make theater.
You wear many hats, sir.
I wear a lot of hats. Yes.
I find it interesting, like, so you mentioned Black Philadelphia Theater Alliance, and Black Theater Alliance Philadelphia.
BTAP,
Yeah,
yeah.
BTAP. Yeah, Black Theater Alliance Philadelphia. I always have to think of the acronym, how it's said, and
Right,
then
right,
work
right.
backwards from there. Anyway,
Yeah.
you mentioned BTAP, and I was just thinking of some of the other members, including myself and Lanish Miller White, and um,
Hmm.
like we all wear so many hats as Black theater
So many.
artists.
Yeah. Yes.
Um, I wonder if that's endemic to being a Black theater artist.
I think it's definitely endemic to being a Black theater artist, and I think uh, theater also just lends itself to uh, wanting to thrive in theater. I think you have to be a multi hyphenate,
Mm.
and I think, yeah, I think being a Black artist in general, that you have to be multi hyphenate as well.
Yeah. Today's title was borrowed from a Janelle Monáe quote, speaking of multi-hyphenates. Um,
Mm,
it is International Women's Day, and so I thought it appropriate to title the show with a black woman leader who has good quotes. Um,
yeah, she does.
yeah.
Very good quotes.
Um, Tell us a little bit about the show that you guys have coming up.
Yeah,
Uh,
Megan, you want to talk a little bit?
yeah.
Yeah, sure. So we are in the midst of the process of working on A View from the Bridge, which is a wonderful play by Arthur Miller. Um, it's a play that I don't think has been produced in Philadelphia in quite a while, in and around Philadelphia. Um, and it's a play that essentially asks the question, how do we hold people who make bad choices? Um, and what do we do in terms of our own choices around them? Do we support them? Do we condemn them? What does that say about us as a community? Uh, and it's been really interesting to be exploring these questions with the cast.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and
I'll tell you
I
way more
really,
specifics, but I don't want to, no
yeah,
spoilers.
yeah. Drips and drabs, drips and
Yeah,
drabs, the
yeah.
breadcrumbs, breadcrumbs. But I feel I also see when I see the wonderful actors and the work that Megan is doing in the space and the rehearsals, I also see the pressures of the world and of those characters' circumstances that cause them to make those choices, and put them in places where, in their minds, they feel that this is a good choice. So and we might feel like, oh, it's obvious, we can tell like that's not a good choice, but from their perspective, it's a good choice. And I feel like we've all been in
I
situations.
mean, I'm constantly in
Um,
that situation. I mean, I know you know this, but I talk politics a lot on this show, and I think like this is a really good example of theater talking to politics. We often look at I'll do it this way. I was walking down the street the other day, and a man was walking down the street, and he was going off. He had something had triggered him about what somebody had said or done in his presence, and he was going off about how we're too gay, and Trump is gonna take back the presidency because we're too gay, and we're too trans, and society is going downhill, etc., etc. Um, and he's a black man who lives in the city of Philadelphia, like like that. Voting for and or supporting, the Republican Party, especially in its current iteration, I think is kind of endemically counter to your own best interests if you're a black man in the city of Philadelphia in
mm-hmm,
2023. I mean, I could be
mm-hmm,
wrong, but
hmm,
that's how I feel about
mm-hmm,
it anyway.
mm-hmm, yeah.
um, yeah, so
Yeah, and I feel like, uh, and then I kind of try to, I agree, and I try to pull back to those who are voting in that way, and there's there's things that are making them feel like
right, exactly.
that's the right
That's the
choice,
right
and
choice.
it's yeah,
Yeah, it does beg the question, how did he wind up with that perspective? What
yeah,
happened?
yeah,
That's what
yeah,
I think that's what I'm curious about. What's the sequence of events that takes someone from where you'd think in their own self-interest they would be, part of a mindset that we assume, and and yet they are not. And so what happened there?
Right.
yeah.
And then also, that brings me to people making the bad choices of like committing crimes, being shooting people, or even wielding a gun in the city of Philadelphia. Carrying a gun, even if you're a registered gun owner with a legal license to carry in the city of Philadelphia, is a pretty bad idea right now. Like you're
Yeah.
way more likely, even if you just look at it statistically, scientifically, you're way more likely to get injured or shot or killed. Um,
Mhm.
Yet people make that choice every day. People make that choice both legally and illegally. Like, people
Yeah.
choose to illegally carry a weapon and, go around the system and create their own system. That seems like a good choice to them at the time, but from an outside perspective, it is universally a bad choice. How do we reconcile that? I guess, um, you know, I guess those
Yeah,
things.
I don't know. And I think that's also, like, to Megan's point, that's some of the things that come up in the show is like, well,
Yeah.
what do we do about it? Because it's not like, how do we stop that from happening, or how do we change people's minds? Because that's a tougher, right? That's tough to do.
Yeah, you can't
But
you
what do
can't
we
change individual minds like that.
No,
Yeah.
no. But what do we as a whole in the collective, and those who are seeing these things and who are either kind of involved or entrenched in that kind of world or not, what do we do about it? What do we do about it? Because there's care that has to, I think, happen somewhere.
Yeah.
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 There's also lines that need to be drawn too. That's the thing, is
Mm,
that, and I think that's one of the questions in the play is like, when do you draw the line, and when do you pray for someone? When do you hold them right in the light, and when do you let them know that this is just completely unacceptable? And I think it's also part of that, those who do not study history are doomed to repeat it,
mm,
because at the time of that, when Miller wrote the play, it was an incredibly fraught time, and people were calling out their friends, uh, to Congress, and then getting blacklisted and never working again and having to leave the country because they were, communist sympathizers, or, you know, uh, there were the intersection of politics and art and life is not new.
No, no, absolutely not. And
they're
yeah.
inextricably bound, if you ask me. I
Yeah,
mean,
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah,
they're all.
so true.
I mean, I've always said that that's one of the reasons. Like I've continued this show in the direction it's been going is because, like, a lot of people that are coming on as guests go, I don't know anything about like politics. I'm like, well, politics. You live in the United States in 2023. You know,
It's
you
all over you.
it's all over you. I'm having a little camera problem clearly, but I'll work on that. Anyway, you guys, um,
That's a great headshot. That's a great headshot
yeah.
there. I really like
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know what's going on with my camera card is being weird. Anyway,
that.
these are the problems that you have when you're producing on your own in a
Yes,
room by yourself.
yes.
Anyway, so I mean, like these things are clearly the things that we deal with all the time. Um, and artists, I think, I feel, have a unique perspective on things, and so that's why I always invite the artists to comment on the day's
Mm,
topics. I think I
yeah.
think it's valuable for folks to provide those opinions. Anyway, more about the show. Where can people see a view from the bridge?
It will be running March 17th through 26th at the Opera Delaware Studios in Wilmington, Delaware.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and there's a slew of shows there. Student tickets are $15, and general admission is $20.
All right.
Yeah.
And where can people find tickets for the show?
Newlighttheater.com is where you can go to get your tickets for that
Awesome.
if you'd like.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the venue. I've not been there before. What
Sure. Yeah. Opera Delaware Studios. So Opera Delaware is Delaware's premier opera organization, and they have a great relationship with them. Also in that space is where Delaware Shakespeare operates out of. And we just had our fundraising event there, New Light Night, at this space as well. Very cool space. They have kind of a ballroom space that's on the second floor, and then there's downstairs on the first floor is a black box space they use for rehearsals and some performances. And that's where we'll be performing in their black box space that we have there. And it'll be an in the round experience that we think will really allow for the story and the characters to kind of pop, and we invite the audience into the questions that we're asking them through that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Um, any particular things that you think audiences should look out for, that they should definitely expect, or think, like, come prepared to ask questions or answer questions about?
Well, not getting too, too into the details of the plot, because of course we want people to experience the story, uh, firsthand and fresh. It's a little shocking. It was shocking for the time, and it still is. Some of our central character, Eddie Carbone, is a man of passions, and his passions are not always directed in ways which we embrace as as healthy. It may be one word for it. um and I think that's why actually doing it at the in the Upper Delaware black box space will be so immediate, because we are right there. It's a lovely intimate space, and so to be so close to the actors and so close to the relationships, I think it's going to be and then these choices that he makes, which are uh not good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
really part of the fallout.
Oh, big time. Yeah. Yeah. And I agree that the space that it's in really creates this, like, I use the word invitation, like an invitation for the audience to really be in the mix of what's going on between these characters. What choices are they making? And we invite them into their own kind of comparison of themselves. What would I do in that situation? Would I do that kind of thing, or am I capable of doing that kind of thing? Is that something that's in me as well?
I I um I always find that when viewing a piece of art, a movie, reading a novel, experiencing a piece of theater, that when I ask myself that question, that it tends to be sort of guided answer by the author, and
Mhm.
or the people on stage,
Yeah.
they're the director, perhaps. Um, how do you find that, like, you want to drive the narrative in a certain way while working on a piece, or do you try to leave it open for the audience to answer those questions themselves?
Well, I mean, I can only speak for myself as a director, that I tend to I tend to serve the work of the playwright, and to understand the questions that they are asking, and to lift those without adding my own um, particular spin on it. Um, though, of course, we're always bringing our own biases to our work. And so I'm sure that there is something about what we're creating that is, reflective of my own feelings about it. And in rehearsal, often sharing personal perspectives on the choices of the characters, and our own feelings about it. So I, I mean, I think that I I'm married to a playwright, so I'm very respectful of playwrights, and the questions they're asking. And I do feel that my job is to let the work speak for itself. In this particular piece, I think Miller's kind of ambivalent in some ways. I'm not sure that he knows quite how he's feeling. I mean, at the time when he wrote the play, he himself was struggling mightily with issues of betrayal and forgiveness, and I think that it's the struggle itself that he's asking us to question and observe, and where we stand when someone makes a choice that we ourselves could have made, And what do we do about it?
Mm, mm. Yeah, and I feel like that through the natural kind of organic synthesis of making manifest something from page from to stage, there's going to be some residue of the people of that time on that particular production performance. Just organically, that kind of thing happens, and I think that's what I really love about what we do too, is that we can take a piece that might be written in a different, totally different time and phase of human history and life, and it inevitably will be contemporized by the people just engaging with it in through the process of producing it. And there's
Yeah, I
something
mean,
about that as a fingerprint
yeah.
of the current time on the work that happens there, that even if you're trying to like Megan says, and I agree, like just making sure that what's being said, you're just making what's being said super clear, just articulating it very clearly, that even through that process there's some residue of like the
I mean,
current
there's
time.
necessarily some residue. I mean, that's
Yeah.
that's why, I and others. I mean, you yourself, Newton, have also, like through BTAP and through other things that we've done. Like it's important to have representation of different viewpoints in all aspects of the production. Like
Mm-hmm.
you can't just have like a white led organization randomly producing a story about Harlem in the 1960s.
Right. Right.
You're not going to get the residue is there, and the residue is necessarily there, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
there is interpretation and bias and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that has always interested me as well, like the even if you're trying to, I think every theater artist, and this is something that audiences might not know, or that people outside the production environment might not know, but there's a real um, dedication to bringing the words and intent of the author of the play into the actual final product. And there's a dedication to that, and it is in so far as it goes so far as when there are things not written on the page but that would assist our storytelling, that we have to go back to the author and or the author's publisher and ask if we can add it. Or and even a recent process I was in, there a character is walking off stage and there's nothing written for them to say or do, but they're walking off stage in a carnival setting, so they would obviously be saying or doing something, and it feels very unnatural to have them just exit. Um, so the producers had to go to the publishing company and say, "Hey, do you mind if the actors ad lib some nonsense as they're walking off stage, or is there something in particular you'd like them to say?" I think most audiences don't realize how very rigorous the process can be. Um,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree, and I appreciate that kind of I will respect is what I'm going to call it. No,
hmm.
I was going to say reverence, but I think respect of of artistry, and saying, hey, we're here, we have a process here, and we're being very professional about it, and we feel strong enough that this might be a great addition to our process, that we're reaching out to you to see if that's something that fits into the general messages or questions that you've uh, originally posed in the text that you've made. And that's, to me, it's just kind of like um, uh, some of the most like delicious artistic collaboration, kind of like, just moments of like just the email to the playwright saying, hey, we're trying to, we think this could be something that could be awesome and still fit into what we have. What do you think? That's just really nice, because it doesn't always happen. And I also think that sometimes artists might shy away from it. And I actually think that I like kind of pushing into like, let's connect, and let's collaborate on this, and not just let's take this grocery list that you made and just make sure I pick up the milk and the eggs. It's like we're making pancakes. We need syrup too, you know.
Hmm.
So, you know,
Yeah, and theater is so fundamentally a collaborative art. And so I think any playwright knows that a director, an ensemble is going to take their work and then interpret it, right? Because, if a playwright is, creative artists, and oftentimes artists or actors rather, and directors are thought of as interpretive artists. And so, we are going to bring our own spin, our own thoughts, our own perspectives,
yeah,
our own design to someone else's work. And that's the point. That's the whole
yeah.
idea. Um, yeah. So I mean, so I think if Arthur Miller saw our production,
I was gonna say,
it's certainly not, it doesn't look like what he had in mind.
right.
His play is a very domestic play. It's set in a domestic environment of a home. We're not doing that. We're essentially setting our play on the wharf where immigrants arrive, and where, what is Alfieri, our sort of, who's our sort of our chorus, he talks about this is the place where the tonnage of the world is,
Yeah.
accepted through the gullet of this particular, place off the Brooklyn Bridge. And so, it felt more interesting to set this at a place where hope lives for people who
Mhm.
are without hope, and also where they are thrust back into a
Mhm.
place where there is no more hope, if in fact there is betrayal, right? So
Mhm.
immigrants are informed on in this story, and have to leave when they've come with great hope that their lives are going to improve. Um, so that felt like a more interesting place to set this story for
Yeah.
us. And also just was, made more sense of the space that we're actually producing it in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting when like the practical like needs kind of can really inform truly, I think, transformative artistic choices as well,
Enabling
through writing.
constraints, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
I
Um,
I have a renewed appreciation for that after a recent process. The like the there oftentimes in theater we the artistic side of theater will like shoot for the moon, and then the technical side of theater will go, yeah, that's not happening. um,
yes.
um, but it also leads to greater creativity, I think, because you have to resolve those problems. You have to um, we want a boat to come out on the center of the stage. Well, okay, here's a boat, that we built. It comes out on the center of the stage. Well, it doesn't. I don't like the way it works. Okay, let's problem solve. There's no practical solution for this. You don't like it, great, that's fine. We can get rid of it, but now we have a problem. How do we solve this? You don't have a boat that can come out on stage. How do we make this work? How do we still tell the same story? Or does it become a better story because we're not out in a boat in the middle of the lake? Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
so yeah. Um, yeah.
To speak on the themes of immigration, so New Light Theater's mission also, every production that we do, we partner with a thematically connected charitable organization or nonprofit. And so for the last couple of shows, last all of our shows, we partner with some other group, and we issue forth some proceeds from our production towards that organization. And there's also kind of an enrichment process where that organization can come. We invite them to meet with the cast and inform and educate the cast on what they do and their services. And so for this production of View from the Bridge, we're partnering with JFS Delaware, which is the Jewish Family Services of Delaware. And they are I believe, the only refugee placement program in Delaware. And specifically, we're partnering with their RISE program. And the RISE program offers, if you're a new citizen here, they offer you services to help you get acclimated, if you would, how in whatever degree that you would like. And then they also offer displaced families and displaced persons, services for displaced people. And so case management, mental health, financial services, and some other things as well. And we think that this combination of partnering our shows with some organization that's doing some work and impact in the community really puts us in the place in the intersection of art and advocacy and art and activism.
Mhm.
And so for this program, for this our production of View from the Bridge, JFS came in and did a presentation of their services, and it really kind of brought the entire crew from the cast through the designers and everyone into I think um, the heart of why we're doing this and bringing them along on that journey that the whole organization is moving through. And I think it enriched their rehearsal process. And we try to do this in the very first day. So then when we're going into the rehearsal process, there's insight about the experiences of immigrants in these United States that actually that experience hasn't changed much. We're realizing like some of the same kind of feelings and hurdles and obstacles and emotional transformations and social transformations are kind of still the same that Arthur Miller was talking about to now. And so I think it really heightened, I think, the process. Megan, would you like to talk a little bit about how you thought that was that
Well, it
made
was
the
just it
process?
was it was really profound to have the representatives from Rise there on for the first rehearsal because they right now, of course, are primarily or I think I would say primarily assisting refugees from Ukraine, and so the reality of the just the hardships and the just the sort of broken lives that are trying to be rebuilt here made the circumstances of some of the characters so uh, immediate. It's just so real, and so it's just such an incredible way to make a story that feels like, oh, that's from the 1950s and that was something that was happening then, feel very present and necessary, and a conversation that's ongoing.
Yeah, and and there's also services I think that Rise also has where they're collecting donations for any type of household goods that any of these refugees might need once they have found placement. And there will be some at every production that we have, there will be an opportunity, a representative from Rise, but also an opportunity for the audience to either bring certain things that they want to donate or to reach out to Rise to donate things of their own if they would like to. So we're trying to bridge some of these gaps and really try to figure out um, how to be impactful while we're
Mm.
making art at the same time.
I think art is in and of itself impactful, but it is good to see additional impacts.
Yeah,
Like additional ways to affect change. Because a lot of times, I think unfairly, but I also it is the reality of the world that people look at the arts and they go, oh, there's these ivory towers. People kind of have their heads stuck up their rear ends. Um, we think we're doing a lot of stuff, but we're not doing anything. Kind of mentality from those who don't participate in the process of the arts. Um, even if they watch entertainment every night on TV or go to the movies, they don't understand how like all of that is a continuation of this medium that was really created, along with humanity. Like, we have records of the theater form going back into Africa pre-human diaspora. So we know that like theater and the arts are intrinsically human, and we've always used the arts to interpret our world, but there's still a huge segment of the population that goes, oh, that's not for me, it's too hoity-toity, it's too whatever. Um, you know, it's difficult to process that as you're also one of the people making the art. Like, I I I can't process that myself. Like, I can't accept that. Like, that the whole concept is foreign to me. I'm like, you're just wrong. But then at some point you have to look at it and go, well, what could we do to maybe make people understand what the arts does. I mean, like, there's things like Philabundance, which received huge boost from participating with artists around the city, including radio DJs and stuff like that. Which is where most of the people that contribute to Philabundance originally ran into them. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, it's just interesting when you get to then, like, like Republican or conservative, quote unquote, methodologies of let's cut the budget by cutting out the arts. Well, like, we spend like 0.5% of our budget on the arts in the United States, and there's countries that spend literally 20% of their budget on the arts.
Yeah.
What are we doing wrong? And is this one of the things that contributes to somebody making bad decisions, that are against their own interests, even though it's going to be detrimental to them. When we do a piece of art, even a view from the bridge, when we do it, when we analyze it, when we process it through the modern director, the modern actors, and the modern audience, we consider these words that were written decades ago, but with a modern view, and they're applicable. And it helps inform those who come to see it and helps them make decisions. It might not help in the immediate sense. It's not an answer. Should I go to the bar tonight, or should I go home? But it,
Yes, the answer is yes.
yes.
The answer is yes.
Yes.
um, but yeah, I mean, it is, but there's an element of like, informing, and that's where the arts has always shined. But there's a lot of pushback towards that now. Where I'm going with this, the Delaware River waterfront. So I wanted to talk a little bit about there's a new project that's finally got. It's not really a new project. It's been in the works for about 20 years or so. Recapping the span from Front Street to the Delaware River, in between Market and Spruce Street,
Mm,
to recreate that park, and provide more pedestrian access to the waterfront from Old City, and from the, like, more touristy areas of the city.
mm.
That project
Yeah,
has
it's
been,
not. It's supposed to cover 95,
yeah.
right? It's supposed
Hmm.
to, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we could go even further back, and we
Mm-hmm.
could talk about redlining and how dropping 95 between the city of Philadelphia and the waterfront was basically getting rid of a lot of poor neighborhoods and black neighborhoods, and just literally cutting the city off from a major manufacturing and transportation thoroughfare. But that's neither here nor there. That's the history in which A View from the
Uh-huh.
Bridge was written. Like, that's
Right.
the era in which A View from the Bridge was written. We were talking
Mm-hmm.
about these things back then. Um,
Yeah.
and when we started talking about when Megan, when you started talking about how these things are kind of echoing history, it reminded me of the meme that's going around. How are you failing an open book test when history is repeating? How are you failing an open book test? Anyway, um,
So true.
how are you going to be on the wrong side of history at this point?
Right.
Anyway, but yeah, so the Delaware River waterfront, in the city of Philadelphia, has a relatively unique setup. while being a public space, it is privately owned by a corporation that has is entirely funded by the city. So the Delaware River Waterfront Corporation is the corporation in which the city of Philadelphia has vested all of its ownership of the waterfront properties that Philadelphia has owned in history. So this is all the piers, all the way from the northeast in Frankfurt, the Frankfurt area, all the way down past the Navy Yard and into Essington area, and really, there's still some private ownership of some of the properties in that interspersed in that area. But basically, if you want access to the river, you have to deal with the Delaware River Waterfront Corporation. Um, Much as any situation that has ever been developed like that, there have been instances of fraud and abuse and embezzlement, etc. Some of the most recent, like the DWRC, one of the leaders of the DWRC was fired and facing embezzlement charges, and they had stole, I believe it was something like $5 million, which sounds like a lot, but in the reality of like modern embezzlement, if you're going to steal $5 million, you better go for more, because that's not really enough. Like, you're not going to be able to defend yourself at that point. You're not going to afford the lawyers.
Yes.
Yeah. At any rate,
Wow.
so the DWRC, I'm a big water person. Like, like my family has always been related to the waterfront. My family has lived in Maryland and Pennsylvania, along the water for generations.
Hmm.
Basically since the diaspora at the end of slavery. Um, and There's a deep history of black excellence along the Chesapeake Bay and along the Delaware River. A lot of the wealth and power developed by the black community in this section of the country is because we had businesses in on the waterfront. We provided transportation, and we helped people escape slavery throughout the Civil War and Reconstruction. We helped develop this wealth into a power base here. And what I find interesting is that the Delaware River Waterfront Corporation does not seem to ever turn its eye towards the actual river. A lot of what they do is based in development of the shoreside activities and amenities
Mm.
available to people, and so the river becomes a backdrop. Um, I don't, this is a for better for worse thing, right? Like, we've got a leader of Parks and Rec who believes that parks aren't useful when they're just free space to be used as somebody sees fit. She believes that it's got to be organized use. You have to have fields and play spaces and organized use. So athletics and training and stuff like that. Um, there's a lot of
Incorporated. I think about like incorporated use, right? It's like it's a part of the community, not just like a fixture of the
right,
community,
right.
or a not a fixture, but what's the other word? A backdrop, I think, is a good one that you used. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, I guess here's the question. You know, you mentioned the setting, and I'm tying your piece in here off the little bit I know of it, but The you mentioned the setting being a kind of wharf where immigrants arrive.
Mhm.
How, is it is the water just a backdrop? Is the water ever just a backdrop, or is it an intrinsic character to the location that needs to be involved with whatever's going on there?
What a fascinating question.
Mm-hmm.
I I am so grateful that you raised this, James. I have to say that it feels to me that the play and the characters in the play are very much taking that water for granted. It feels to me that water is probably the lifeblood of this whole story, and I don't think anyone's looking at it at all.
Mm.
So I am going to carry this into me a rehearsal tonight because
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is, I feel scales falling away from my eyes right now because I feel like this is a much bigger metaphor that we have to look at.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think it's like, we've taken the name of the play, kind of the view from the bridge, and trying to kind of like, what does that mean and whose view is it and what bridge and that kind of thing. But it is true that there's water under that bridge, and typically under most bridges. And that water may be the need, maybe the thing that makes the need for the bridge too. So it's interesting, as the water could be the thing that's bringing everything together, but it also could be the thing that is a part of what might make you need to have some way of traversing space, ideas,
Yeah,
questions,
yeah,
choices. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it feels like, I mean, like it's human arrogance, right? The way we
Mm.
just make use of the natural world for our own industry, for our own, gain, and 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 the idea that that it's actually not a part of the conversation is, I think, something we're just beginning to recognize, that we are in collaboration with the planet that we're on,
Yeah.
um, and that it is not here for us to enslave, for us to, sap of its anything that's of value, um, and and to know that at some point it actually has the power that we only think we're in control.
Yeah.
Um, and now I'm trying to connect this to the play because
Yeah.
'cause I think it's all there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Well,
always
there's
all there. It's just
yeah.
Yeah.
how much time do you have to dedicate to finding
Yeah.
it?
That's true.
um, but
True.
yeah, like like this is part of my frustration as a person who like is a waterfront person. I think this is a recurring theme in life. Right now, like and you mention it as perhaps the natural world isn't here for us to dominate. It's something that we need to pay homage to. Like we had the whole thing with the water protectors. What was that, like 6 years ago now? And the pipeline that got canceled, and now you still have people saying like, oh, that pipeline is why we have high gas prices. No, it's not. Please stop. They weren't putting gas through that pipeline. They were putting tar sands through that pipeline. It's not for that. Anyway,
Ugh.
um, but yeah, like like I worry about like these types of projects, these types of things. Um, and these are interrelated with like the project at Fairmount Park, the project at JFK Park, the golf course project. Um, how much do we need to when or should we turn from taking the natural world, molding it into something that we can use, versus just enjoying the natural world, and using the natural world as it comes to us. Um, my point with
I
my point with the Delaware River Waterfront Corporation part is we have this whole big project. to overcap 95, gain access to the waterfront. But in the plans for that project, there's also the destruction of and removal of a lot of the actual water access. There's currently three marinas on the Delaware River waterfront in Philadelphia: Penn's Landing Marina, Pier 3, and Pier 5. They're the only access that people have to the actual water. At Penn's Landing Marina, the Independent Seaport Museum maintains a small dock that people can use for like little paddle boats and also kayaking. They maintain a kayaking program, and they have a couple of tourist attractions in some boats that can take people out on tours. Um, there's another tour company at that marina that has its own independent dock. And then there's other tour companies that operate out of the marina there. But those are the only, like, as far as public access goes, like, purely like public access, like, where I'm not, if I wasn't a boat owner and I wasn't somebody who, like had a commercial reason to be on the water in Philadelphia, those are the Penn's Landing Marina is the only access to the water that I would have. Like, I can't launch a kayak from Pier 3 or Pier 5 without
Right.
paying rent. Um, I can't just randomly walk up to the waterfront anywhere else along the Delaware River and launch a kayak into the water. Um, I have to go to Bartram's Gardens, which is a really long paddle away. um, we have this river that has been intrinsic to Philadelphia and the founding of Philadelphia, the continuation of Philadelphia, the black community in Philadelphia, the power base of Philadelphia, yet we have no public access to it.
Mm-hmm.
How do we how and where and why can we make it how do we turn that and make people aware that yes, the water is there and it is a character and it is part of our history, and it is something that people need access to, not just as a backdrop.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know, Megan, you have some things, but
No, no, you go ahead.
okay. I was
Hold
thinking
on.
about like there used to be like the ride the duck that used to be out there that like one of those like I think the perception of the river also is a thing that like the public perception, I think people always think of it as really dirty water, and people
Mhm.
really think of like this they call the Schuylkill Schuylkill punch, and they call the Delaware River this other thing, and it's always talking about how disgusting it is. And I think I don't know, like the way you're bringing this up makes me feel like that's some type of propaganda of sorts that
It is. It
keeps the
absolutely
keep
is.
right that keeps that keeps the public kind of wanting to not go into the water so that then it can be controlled.
Well,
And
and that is
you know what I mean?
that is an actual thing here in the city of Philadelphia. So,
Yeah,
um, I've referenced this on the show before. The Delaware River from Frankfurt down past Essington is registered by the not FDA, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, as a secondary contact waterway. That means that the regulations and cleanliness of the water do not have to allow for somebody to directly immerse themselves in it. Do you know who argues for that? The whole shipping industry that is
of
on the piers
course,
south in the south
of
end
course.
of the city of Philadelphia. So all along the waterfront, there's a huge shipping industry that still exists in Philadelphia, and it is south of the Walmart parking lot. South of there, there's a major shipping and
Huge.
station that has many cranes, and on the Camden side, there's also a huge amount of shipping that occurs. Um,
Hmm.
we receive cars, we receive fruits and vegetables, we receive tons of stuff. We don't export much anymore, but there's the history of export. Graffiti Pier, for instance, in which is a well-known local landmark. Used to be a coal pier, so we used to take coal from the whole Northeast and ship it out of Philadelphia. And like there's this whole history that it's intrinsic to Philadelphia, but also it's in conflict with the private use of the waterway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I
Makes
think
sense.
the thing I was going to just note is just how far north you have to go in order to use the Delaware River for recreational purposes. You have to go, if you just want to throw an inner tube into the river and just ride it for an hour or so, you got to go really far north of the city. And I'm imagining that's pretty hard for people to do.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And I think about it's just um in one of the rivers on either side of Manhattan that there's shipping's happening, but there's also quite a lot of recreation also happening
oh
Yeah.
in
yeah,
those waters,
yeah. I've
you
been
know?
I've been through that section of the East River, and you know, private mariners have to be cautious because
Sure,
there's
sure.
massive ships that can't stop or
Yes.
turn, but
Yeah,
you can use the river, and
you can use it.
it is considered a primary contact river. So the
Yeah.
regulations are stricter there than here in Philadelphia.
Hmm.
And it's cleaner in ostensibly.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Mhm.
so yeah, I mean these
Yeah,
things
interesting.
are always interesting to me. I think they tie together. You were gonna say something.
Surely. No, I wasn't. I was just
Oh,
saying interesting.
um, last minute here. I just wanted to touch on International Women's Day again. It is International Women's Day. I always find um, we always talk about February as the shortest month of the year, and then March is a normal length month, but Women's History Month, and then but Black History Month is February, and then Women's History Month is March, and Black History has the shortest month of the year, and I don't understand why. Anyway.
As a, as a woman,
Such
I'm going to keep honoring all of our friends of color throughout.
Yeah. I think we should just make it Black Women's History Month, and then we can have another
there we
Women's
go.
History Month.
Yeah.
Every month is everybody's History
Two
Month, but
months worth of just, yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and then just wanted to touch quickly on Twitter. Folks watch this show on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and Twitch. And our Twitter uh, what do you call it? Archives are going away. Twitter, now owned by Elon Musk, has been looking for ways to cut their costs. One of the ways they recently discovered would be to delete all the archives of any video that has been uploaded onto Twitter. So all our archives are going away on Twitter. That's okay. They're still on YouTube and Facebook and Twitch. Twitch actually does a similar thing. They delete videos after 60 days or something, which uh,
Really?
I don't mind. But um, we were gonna talk a little bit about the interesting thing with modern media. It's inherently non-permanent. Um,
Yeah.
any last thoughts on
We're
that?
I think that the like theater is one of those ephemeral kind of it exists and then it doesn't at all. And there's something magical about it. I think that our current sensibilities around video and seeing things and being able to access them and seeing that, there's Broadway HD, which is, and these types of things where you can get certain live performances that have been recorded professionally and that kind of thing. So I think there's now some type of precedence. It's like I think about like Hamilton now was recorded very professionally when it was on Broadway and then was released on Disney Plus. Now everyone can see it in this type of way. I don't know how I feel about it in terms of like, is that good or not? Like I have two sides of the coin. I think it's good for access for certain things because not all what we do again exists and then doesn't exist, and then having some exposure to it or having allowing people to have access to it, I think is important. But there's something magical about something that is happens in a space, in a room, that people have an experience, a shared experience with each other in that space. And it can't be replicated. And there's something about that that I also think is wonderful and great. So I'm not sure. I don't know. I have thoughts, but I'm not exactly sure. What do you think, Megan?
Well, for me, I think what I'm thinking about what it is to be on a river. And the way that you hold a memory of actually interacting with the natural world in your body, and how different that is from looking at it from the banks of the pier, right? Or from a bridge. Like you don't actually get the experience of being immersed in something unless you're actually in it. So I'm not sure that how this exactly relates to what you're asking, James, but I don't know. I think there's a big reason why I never went into film. Well, there's a couple of reasons I never went into film, but I think that the immediate experience of something for me is why theater has always spoken to me, and maybe why letting go of things, right, and letting them become a part of we will always have archived uh recordings of things that are meant to be recorded, right? Because that's how they're meant to be experienced. And I think that there's a big conversation around, how media wants to be preserved. I think I'm not the person to be part of that conversation because I'm so about having it live in my body rather than on a computer somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, what I was gonna sum up this with is like permanent impermanence. A river is a very good metaphor for permanent impermanence. It is always flowing and changing, yet it's always there. Like,
It's always there.
yeah, you have the Delaware River. It's always there. It's always been there. It will be there long after we're gone.
Yeah.
Um, and so it is
Mm,
permanent. It is a permanent feature of this section of the world, yet
Yeah.
it's impermanent. With the way we
mm,
use it, the way we are on it, the way we're in it, the way we experience it changes from day to day. Even from hour to hour, like,
mm-hmm.
I can tell you as somebody who's sailed it, even moment to moment, if you're out there with sails up in the wind and the wind changes and suddenly you find yourself, leaning over on the side of your boat, and nothing changed about that river. It's still permanent, but it's very impermanent as well. Um,
Yeah,
Mhm.
anyway.
That's very
yeah.
akin to theater.
That's
What it's
right.
like to
I
be on
agree.
stage. Yep.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. One of our regular viewers commented, "It's a moment," to the whole concept of this permanent impermanence. Um,
Mm, mm.
but yeah, thank you very much for joining us today. It's 11:06, so I'm gonna let you guys go. And I'm gonna go to a one up of me and talk us out of this show.
Okay.
I appreciate you joining us. I hope everybody gets to see a view from the bridge and at Opera Delaware, March 17th to 26th, 2023. That's this year, guys. So go see it. And any last thoughts from either of you?
been a
Thanks so much
delightful
for having us
conversation.
on. It's just delightful
Yeah,
conversation. Yeah,
so
thanks so
wide-ranging.
much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I appreciate the work you do in the community, James, and just really
Oh,
thank you
thank
so
you.
much. Seriously, seriously,
All
thank you.
right, thank you. And so thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to go to a one above me. Feel free to stick around. I have a minute after this if you want to talk. But let me drop off this broadcast. And thank you to my audience. Thank you very much for joining us every week as you do. Really appreciate your comments and your viewership. We try to bring you news and information and a black perspective. It's a lot. It's a lot to try and bring, but we do our best. Um, Tune in next week. We'll have another show for you next Wednesday. Let me see if I can pull up who our guest will be. No, don't have the guest yet. But we will have another guest for you. More news, more current events, more information, and interesting things to talk about. So I hope to see you next week. Join us then. And thanks for watching, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your week.